James Damore learned the hard way what happens when you question the groupthink of Silicon Valley. While working at Google, the world's most powerful company, Damore privately circulated a paper questioning his employer's diversity policies. He didn't attack anyone, he just questioned the internal logic of what he was being told. For that, the company vilified him and his character and then fired him. Now, Damore and another ex-Google employee, David Guterman, are suing that company. They're accusing Google of systemic bias against white employees, men, and conservatives. Their 161-page lawsuit exposes a remarkable and terrifying climate at Google, a place where biased, hateful, and even violent political rhetoric is totally acceptable, just as long as it's directed against the right targets. The suit contains documents that shows Googlers openly maintain, for example, politically motivated employee blacklists. Here's one. In 2015, Google manager Paul Cowan wrote the following on Google's internal networks for all employees to see. If you express a dunderheaded opinion about religion, about politics, or about social justice, it turns out I'm allowed to think you're a half-wit. I'm perfectly within my rights to mentally categorize you in my D-head box. Yes, I maintain mentally, but not yet publicly, a blacklist. If I had to work with people on this list, I would refuse and try to get them removed. Well, the blacklists were real and not just internal. They also applied to conservative figures from outside the company. Blogger Curtis Yarvin, known online as Mencius Moldbug, once visited Google to have lunch with an employee. According to the suit, Yarvin's arrival triggered a silent alarm at Google. Security arrived to escort him off campus. His mere presence was considered unacceptable. According to the lawsuit, Google employees were awarded with bonuses by the company for publicly denouncing Damore's memo. In April of 2017, Google manager Chris Bissell advised employees if they spoke at conferences, they should do so only while demanding that white males from other companies be kicked off panels in favor of women or non-white employees. Quote, "You'll feel pretty damn smug about doing it," Bissell said. Google HR said Bissell's attacks on the basis of race and gender somehow broke no company rules. And that's just scratching the surface of what Damore has brought to light. The suit has more than 100 examples of employees and managers saying conservatives or Trump supporters ought to be fired, defending political violence, implementing quota systems to discriminate against white people and men to the benefit of other favored groups. It's intense, it's appalling, but don't kid yourself. It's not just happening at Google. Last night, Dennis Finley, who was an editor at the Burlington Free Press, was fired by the media giant Gannett because he dared to just question a proposal that would add a third gender option to driver's licenses in Vermont. Now, if you're conservative, it might be difficult to get your head around what is happening in this country. So much has changed. But here's the bottom line. The federal government is no longer the main threat to your privacy and to your freedoms. You've grown up thinking that. It's no longer true. Big corporations are the main threat to your freedom and your privacy. The government doesn't own your private emails. Google does. Federal employees can't be fired for their political views. Private sector employees are all the time. The Trump administration can't end your ability to publicly communicate your ideas. Twitter and Facebook can do that, and they do it all the time. The Orwellian future is increasingly the Orwellian present, and tech barons are becoming our new commissars. Liberals who once admirably stood up for free expression and in opposition to concentrations of corporate power have been thoroughly co-opted. They're getting rich from it. James Damore has seen it all from the inside firsthand. He joins us now with his lawyer, Harmeet Dillon. Welcome to you both.
Happy to be here.
So, James, in reading these documents, what's so striking is not just that you got fired for expressing your views, and I want to restate, having read the piece that got you fired, you weren't attacking anybody. But you're raising questions. You got fired for that. But Google seemed to feel the need to vilify you after you got fired, to discredit you, to attack your character, and to encourage others to do the same. That seems Stalinist. Why did they feel the need to do that, do you think?
Because I attacked their orthodoxy, and they really needed to send a message to other employees that, no, you can't do this. You can't question our policies.
Yeah, well, they certainly did, paying bonuses to people who denounced you, like a Khmer Rouge re-education session. So, Harmeet, in this complaint, you have example after example of Google targeting people on the basis of their race and their sex. My impression was that was illegal. Is it?
It is illegal. It's illegal under federal law. It's illegal under California law. And what a lot of lawyers even around the country don't understand, that under California law, we have a unique labor code provision that makes it illegal to discriminate against somebody on the basis of their political activities or their political views. So that is among the claims in our lawsuit. And that can actually affect a lot, and it has affected women at Google. So to be clear, our lawsuit actually includes women as well if they've been discriminated against on the basis of any of these protected characteristics.
But I mean, Google is, is the most powerful company in the world, the most famous company in the world, and they're doing this openly. I mean, on internal servers, they don't seem to have worried they were going to get in trouble for violating a pretty basic law. Why?
Well, so they're a $700 billion plus company. They are ubiquitous. They have virtual monopoly power over search engines, and they've been getting away with it for a long time. Now, probably you and I and some other conservatives have been alarmed about what we've read about Google being able to scan Gmail and keep all of your data. That's what's really troubling about this. They, at one time, know everything about you. And at the other hand, they're using that information against you. We've seen them do this in their commercial practices as well. The demonetization of viewpoints they don't believe in on YouTube and other places. And I'm hearing from people inside the company and people who've left the company that their artificial intelligence programs for search engines similarly are applying political biases and filters. And you and I wouldn't even know it. And eventually we're going to find that they're controlling what people think. They are. Obviously inside the company, they're getting away with punishing people and controlling what people think. And, people don't understand that on Silicon Valley, they have these campuses. And you come to the campus in the morning, they take care of your dry cleaning, all of your meals, entertainment, everything. And so people are in this little bubble. It's like the brave new world of Silicon Valley.
And that's fine, but the fact that they're controlling our political dialogue and the way people experience reality, and Congress just sits there passively as if they have no authority, is contemptible. So, James, I would encourage, by the way, our viewers to go online and read what you wrote, because it's hardly radical, it's sensible and smart. Do you think that being at odds with Google is going to affect your future employment prospects?
Yes, definitely. And many employees have made it clear that they're spreading the message about not only me, but anyone that they've discovered that has certain viewpoints, to blackball them out of careers within Silicon Valley. So
why is that not terrifying?
Oh, I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, for every James Damore who got fired, Tucker, there are many people inside the company who we represent who are afraid to even raise their hand and say this is happening to me, because the threat is not just of a blacklist within Google, but of a blacklist within the entire tech community throughout the United States. That's how scary this is. If you're a conservative and you grew up thinking that the federal bureaucracy was the greatest threat to you, it takes a while to realize, no, it's not actually. It's Google, and they have more power. And I just Godspeed to you both, and we really wish you well, and we'll be following this case. Thanks a lot for coming on. Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you.
James, thanks for joining us. This class action lawsuit that you filed comes after your very extensive memo, someone calling it actually a manifesto. And just to share with the audience some of the observations that you made with respect to women: an openness directed towards feeling and aesthetics rather than ideas; extra vision expresses gregariousness rather than assertiveness; also neuroticism, higher anxiety, lower stress tolerance. And you suggest that perhaps these are trends from women that would explain why they haven't advanced as far in Silicon Valley and companies like Google?
Yeah, so I used the psychological literature to try to suggest ways that we could actually make Google a better place and more welcoming place for women. So right after that section, I have a whole page of different policies that we can enact to make Google a more welcoming place for women.
So then why was it interpreted then not as a memo to help women, but a memo that dissed women, that sort of argued that perhaps they weren't up to snuff with respect to the rigors of working in Silicon Valley at the upper echelons?
At least my interpretation is that they felt it was a challenge to the orthodoxy and it needed to be silenced, so they smeared me and anyone that supported me.
Well, there's no doubt that Silicon Valley has, over the last couple of years, admitted to some forms of discrimination, or at least some struggles and challenges when it comes to black, Hispanics, women, and others. So where do you think they differ with the root causes of this from your memo? In other words, they've admitted that there's an issue there, and you know, and it's an issue that you brought up. So there's sort of a universal admission that something is wrong in Silicon Valley, that there has to be changes, and that you know, if they're not, you know, and they've given it a lot of lip service. So why such an adverse reaction to your memo?
Because I offered a different perspective than the orthodoxy, which they said the only cause for the gender gap was sexism, while I said that, you know, it's well established in the psychological literature that men and women approach their careers differently, and that causes different interests in careers, like more women in teaching and nursing and more men in engineering.
That's a good.
It's not just discrimination.
Right, but that's a general observation. We're talking specifically with respect to Silicon Valley, though. Again, if women in your mind are on average have an openness directed towards feelings and aesthetics rather than ideas, so does that mean that they're disqualified for the upper echelons of the industry?
No, not at all. And Silicon Valley isn't unique in the gender gap. About 20% of computer science graduates are women, so which matches the percent of women at Google. So it's not that Silicon Valley itself is toxic. It's just computer science appeals to different people. It doesn't appeal to most people in general, actually.
I think the argument, though, is the ability to climb up the ladder, right? You know, we know when these companies check these lists off, it doesn't always include women in these fields that ultimately can become CEOs in these jobs or these titles that ultimately give them more decision-making power with respect to these companies. Again, they've all sort of admitted it. So the other part of your suit, discrimination against conservatives and white men. Explain that for us, please.
So there's continued harassment and career sabotage of anyone that expresses a conservative viewpoint. And there's constant shaming and attacks against white men within Silicon Valley. And this creates a really toxic environment at Google. And it's really hurting Google's employees, Google, and everyone that uses Google's products, because it seeps into their products.
So on that note, is that a reflection of the people who work there? We have a lot of people from foreign countries who work in Silicon Valley. I've read where over half the businesses being started there now are being started from folks who have arrived here from other countries. Are they bringing their prejudice with them against white conservatives, and has that hurt people's careers?
I think a lot of the prejudice is coming from just select activists that are really bullying everyone. It's not that everyone is biased against conservatives. If you look at the internal polls at Google, about half agreed with my document. But that's not what you would see if you just asked people openly, because there's just so much shaming that's happening. Because if you ever open up that you have certain viewpoints, then you'll be, your career will be sabotaged.
Hermine, I want to ask you, this lawsuit, I think I read that it's a class action lawsuit. Do you anticipate additional workers joining James?
Well, let me speak to that, Charles. I mean, the situation is that we just filed this lawsuit today. It has 3 subclasses. And we absolutely expect other people to join the lawsuit. Now, several of the people's stories who are told in the lawsuit, their names are not used in the lawsuit because some of them still work at Google. Some of them would like to get jobs in Silicon Valley. And one of the main allegations in the lawsuit is that not only does this small cadre of extreme leftists that are running Google or managing Google not tolerate viewpoints like James's and other legitimate viewpoints, but they threaten people with career sabotage, like James said. They have maintained blacklists at Google of people that people refuse to work with. And they've also threatened James and many others with career termination by saying that they will make sure that they don't get jobs in Silicon Valley at all. So that type of an atmosphere where they feel free to bully and shame and threaten people's careers like that, James really had no choice but to file this suit. And we do expect